Hey, what's going on? My name is Gavin. This is Gavin's Guitar Tips. Today I'm going to be teaching you all about single string exercises. Not stuff like that, but things that are going to help you moving like this across the fretboard. And I'm going to show you all those types of patterns that I use just there, and maybe some more that I forgot as well. But it's great tools to improvise with, just moving left and right. Helps you get to new spaces, new areas. And it's also really good for our ear in training where to move next with our 3-note per string shapes, because we're really just guessing each time we move up if we're going to need a half step or a whole step, assuming you don't already have that part of the fretboard memorized. So first thing you need to do is we need to create a palette of notes on our single string. So right now I'm going to play in D minor because I've been having fun in D minor. And if you don't know how to find those notes on that high E string, I'm going to map it out for us. We're going to do open string, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10, 12, and then all the same in an octave up, right? 13, 15, 17, 18, 20, 22, 24 if you have it. Now that you have all that, we're going to group them into 3-note chunks, 3-note per string groupings, right? So when you have 3 notes in a row, you find a way to play them all with your one hand. Just move forward one position at a time. Because that's our palette. So the first thing you can really practice is just using those 3 notes in sequence. So a big thing I'm going to be keen about here too, in the way you practice all these, our goal is to continue moving through the exercise without stopping. We want to find a speed where we can kind of keep the pace going. I'm probably going to mess up a lot here, because I'm speaking at the same time, so I'm not giving the best demo for it all. But when I go practice this, I put on a metronome and I try to find a pace where I can kind of keep it going for a while. I don't want to have to do a bunch of stopping and starting. The idea here really is to challenge that improvisational muscle as well. So what you can do too, if you're not sure where to go next, is you just buy time. You just stay in that same area as long as you need. So here I'm just doing descending of those 3 notes. You can move it around. I'm doing doubles here, right? 2 of each pattern. But you can do just 1. So this is the first thing I'd recommend, just to get used to these sort of 3-note groupings. You can do the same, of course. Ascending pattern, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Once you have that, that's really like great, just like start, even just to take it slow, just to map out these areas and get used to those left to right changes too. If you're finding you're ever really struggling with a certain switch, just practice it in isolation. You know, give it time and attention. Don't just run through the whole thing if you're clearly messing up in one area more than the others. Once you have that down, I'm going to show you this 4-note pattern. So this is super classic. And a lot of stuff I'll do, you'll find has kind of a neoclassical flair. It's probably just you're seeing my influences, all the bands I've listened to, but I also think it's super common in shred playing. So we're going to do 3, 1, 2, 3. That's the pattern. So each 3-note cluster, you play the notes in that order: 3rd note, 1st note, 2nd note, 3rd note, and then you move up, and then you move up. Right, same thing in every pattern, and it has that cool ascending sound to it. You can also play this, of course, in the other direction, but I think typically it tends to sound more cool going up, and maybe it's just because everyone does it that I think that way. But we're going to have a different pattern actually for descending. So think of that really as our ascending pattern when you want to move towards the bridge. When we want to move towards the headstock, we're going to play 3, 2, 1, 0. Same deal here, right? So if it's in isolation, if I'm just repeating the same spot over and over again, that's what it sounds like. But the cool thing about it is this 0, which is really a shift down of our first finger, right? We do 3rd note, 2nd note, 1st note, then shift down. It gets us to the next position. Right? We always shift the first finger down as far as we need to go to get to that next note in our scale. And it just sets us up very nicely for that next one. But it's just a group of 4 descending notes. So I would practice that a lot as well by itself, right? Oops, wrong note. And then what you can try to do is combine the 2, right? So work on ascending and then descending. And make that change on the fly. Right here, I'm just going back and forth. And that's a really great exercise just to do by itself. So put the metronome on and just, oops, sorry. Right, just keep moving left and right, and do it on the fly. You know, don't feel like you just have to go between one area and one area over and over again. If you're really struggling, if you're really absorbing it for the first time, that's fine. But once you get more comfortable, you want to challenge yourself to move more improvisationally, because I think it's great for kind of pushing the speed in a different dimension. There's really our physical hand speed, and then there's our brain speed, and this helps with our brain speed a lot. So once you have that, we have two more cool 4-note patterns. So the great thing is these are all 4 notes. So they're very easy to kind of switch between. One is this sort of neoclassical thing, which I know I'm not prepared for. I should have practiced more. But we have this 1, 3, 2, 3. So it's tough on the pinky. That's why I'm getting nervous about it. 1, 1, 3, 2, 3. That sort of sound, very sort of classical and fun. And then another one that's just very circular is 2, 3, 2, 1. I think this is the first one I really sunk my teeth into. And I think it's quite easy to get fast as well. Sounds kind of cool too when you move around with it. So the idea here is I want you to think about with that metronome really ascending pattern, descending, 2, 3, 2, 1. Neoclassical. I don't have names for them, sorry. But try to switch between them improvisationally, right? And if there's a little mess up here and there, it's okay. Because part of what you're doing is you're training your brain just to keep going. And if you struggle too with a certain connection, just work on that. Like I noticed just there a hard time between the ascending one and the 2, 3, 2, 1. Ooh. But you give it time when you notice there's a pattern that's difficult. So we got our 4-note ones, our 4-note patterns done. Now let's look at our 5-note patterns. So odd grouping here, it's going to screw us up slightly with our picking hand. You just have to be mindful to see the 5-note groups often as doubles, as pairs. So our first pattern here is going to be 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. And the way you need to think of this really is in 2 sets of 5, because the first set starts on a downstroke, down, up, down, up, down. The second set starts on an upstroke, up, down, up, right? And we shift on that first finger, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Same thing now, but in reverse order. We're going to go 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Same sort of concept, but now we're shifting on that pinky finger. And something that's challenging too, it can be fun, is to try to switch between them more quickly, the pattern. So I can do 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, and then 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Ah. That's hard. But it's got a funky kind of feel to it. It also sounds a little less rote and, you know, typical timing than all of our... has that kind of wild sound to it, which I like. So that's a great one to throw in there as well. Just make sure that you always do it in pairs, because if you don't, you might end up having to start on an upbeat, on an upstroke, and now we're kind of all out of context and weird for linking these patterns together. Next thing is a 6-note pattern. So super common neoclassical thing again. 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. And what you're seeing I'm doing here is I'm trying to take bigger jumps. That was kind of rough, but... rather than just working through it completely one at a time. But that's totally fine as well. But another great one. So once you have all those patterns, really the idea is just to keep practicing them left to right, because part of it is getting our hand used to these kind of switches, right? There's a switch sometimes of the meat of the hand where the thumb kind of stays stable and the thumb moves. So for example, if you're just going back and forth between 2 positions... you won't be able to see it very well, but my thumb actually stays in the same place and it sort of pivots on those. Right? But I can't do that anymore once I want to go to a bazillion positions, right? I can't pivot that long forever on my thumb. So what I usually do is every time I switch, I move my arm, this sort of quick motion. And that's part of what we're training here and getting better at in all these horizontal exercises. The next thing I just want to throw out there for you to consider when you're doing this is try to pick an area that you're not familiar with and just let your ear help you out with where the next cluster is. So it's hard to do at like full speed, but you will get better at it. So for example, let's pick a key I really don't know. Let's say like B minor, I definitely don't spend time in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of pick this random string here in B minor, and then I'm just sort of guess what I think is going to come next. Because it's always a half step or a whole step. I'm trying to guess that next note. That's what I'm hearing. Which is a half step. And then I know it's a whole step, whole step, whole step again, half step. So the idea there is I didn't really know what was going on on that string in this key, but I let my ear kind of help me out. And we often find that we just sort of develop this unconscious competence for what to find. Of course, I just played it once before, so it's a little easier now. But the idea is I'm letting my ear help me figure out where those next patterns are, because there's only so many patterns of fingerings to expect here. And it's really just whether it's a half or a whole step next. Of course, we focused on high E string today, but you can do them from whatever string you like. So that's all I got today. Shout out to Donner for this awesome Donner T112 guitar. I'm super enjoying. I'm going to talk more about this in a future video. Super cheap Strat that actually plays very well. And I'm kind of a snob for fast necks and all that kind of thing. So if you want a lesson with me, hit me up on Instagram. I am a little slow to get back to people sometimes because I kind of take people in, new students in sort of waves. But if you're interested, be persistent, hit me up, and I'll get back to you. Thanks. Let me know what I should cover next.